Too many people do not appreciate or understand GTA 5's story. One big aspect of that is how people simplify Trevor by calling him simply a crazy psychopath. But there is a method to the madness, a lot of information under the surface that most people don't see when they just play through the game. But fortunately for everyone, I've played 10,000 hours with a single player of GTA 5, and in this video, I will answer all the many questions people have had for me about Trevor over these many years. Trevor was wrong when he said,
"No one gives a fuck about me!"
Because I do. Is Trevor just delusional, or does his mum actually show up at the end of the game? This question is referencing the side mission that appears for Trevor after you complete the final main mission. This involves Mrs. Phillips showing up to Trevor's surprise. He says,
I didn't know they let you out.
Referencing that apparently she was in jail. Mrs. Phillips then sends Trevor to get some drugs, but by the time he comes back, she's disappeared.
I need you to get me some more delusional.
I can do that. I got the meds, Mom! 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 No, Mother!
And so people question, did this really happen or was it some kind of a delusion? Despite what the GTA wiki says, I don't think anywhere in the game does it explicitly state that Mrs. Phillips is dead. At many points in time during the game when Trevor's mum is insulted, Trevor gets really irate. He also gets very defensive if he's ever called a motherfucker.
Creepy old motherfucker.
I find your t-shirt more than a little offensive.
I'm talking to you, motherfucker. Who else you think I'm talking to, homeboy?
I'm getting bored of this.
What?
It's not legally fucking if you do not penetrate.
This referencing that his mother was apparently physically, sexually, and mentally abusive to Trevor.
Fuck, I had a difficult childhood.
At no point when he's acting offended though for these jokes does he ever say, "How dare you spit on the memory of my mother," or something along those lines. There is a voice line from Amanda where she says,
"How's your mom, Trevor? I miss her."
This line does suggest that Trevor's mum was still alive while Michael and Trevor were still running heists together. So before Trevor went into hiding, as far as Amanda was concerned, Mrs. Phillips was still alive. Then after the 9-year time skip, Amanda's asking, "Hey, where's your mother?" It therefore makes sense to me that in the 9 years that Trevor was on the run, Mrs. Phillips was picked up for some crime and put in jail. Mrs. Phillips says to Trevor,
So you never wrote to me. You never visited.
Well,
which of course makes sense. Despite how much Trevor clearly wanted the approval of his mother, he was on the run. One of the reasons why I'm hesitant to call Mrs. Phillips a delusion is because, while Trevor clearly is crazy, he doesn't seem to see things that aren't there throughout the game. I mean, sure, when he takes drugs, that does sometimes happen, but he didn't seem to be on anything when he saw his mother. There was also the message that Ron leaves on Life Invader. He directly asked Trevor, "Hey, aren't you going to introduce me to your mother?" Suggesting that Ron was aware that Trevor's mum showed up. Now you could argue that maybe Ron just overheard Trevor yelling about his mother. Because Ron did live next door. But it seems to be the one person that Trevor confided in about his past was Ron.
Michael Townley.
He's your buddy you said got shot, right? You guys used to run together.
Yeah, that's him. My best pal.
I thought he was dead.
And you'd think if his mother was dead, then he would have mentioned it to Ron. You can always look for more explanations though, like Trevor repressed the memory of his mother's death and therefore didn't tell Ron about it. Trevor just couldn't deal with it emotionally, so he bottled it up deep inside. But I think this is really reaching. From what we see of Mrs. Phillips, she clearly does not give two fucks about her son. For me at least, based on the personality that we see from Mrs. Phillips, I think it's perfectly reasonable that she'd send Trevor off and go, "Actually, I'm bored of waiting around, I'm leaving," and then just go. I think the best evidence of Trevor's mum being alive though, is that Michael asks about her on a hangout and Trevor expresses that he doesn't want her to see him.
Yeah, Trevor ain't changed at all. He's always had anger issues.
Anger issues. Me?
Anger issues. And other issues.
Oh, well, what? Other issues?
Mother issues.
You did not just say that. He did not just say that.
I said it. How is your mom?
That is none of your business. She's such a sweet woman. A delicate flower. I don't want her to see me like this.
Mother issues.
I will cut a hole in your throat and pull your tongue out if it even looks like it's starting to form the letter M.
And anger issues.
So is she a delusion? I think the things that we see are better explained by her actually being there than her being a delusion. Did Michael make Trevor turn to crime? The way Trevor tells it during Friends Reunited is that Michael's silver tongue convinced him to become a robber. When he explains this story to Wade, he pretends he's speaking of someone else, but obviously he's really talking about himself.
He met a fat, silver-tongued troll under a bridge.
That's cool. What was the troll's name?
Michelle! He'd go into town and rob the shops and inns and such. And he persuaded our hero that maybe he should rob people too. And you know what? Little Trisha did rob people, and little Trisha was good at it.
I doubt that it was Michael that convinced Trevor to become a crazy murderer, though.
I was a drifter, up by the border, wandering from truck stop to truck stop, recently out of the military, huffing gas and fucking people over, killing, eating, whatever. Sure, it was fun, but it was going nowhere.
I'm almost certain before Trevor met Michael, Trevor would have committed some crimes. And even had he never met Michael, Trevor would have committed crimes.
I was running this small air freight outfit in North Yankton. I get close to the old guy and I pull out this flare gun I'm carrying around, squeeze the thing off in his eye.
But I think the act of like robbing stores and stuff for money was motivated by Michael. Why does Trevor hate and still love Michael? It's important to remember that before Michael, Trevor was alone and had no goals for his life. Not only does Michael become his best friend and give him a surrogate family with Amanda, Jimmy, and Tracey, but he also shows Trevor something he's good at, which is robbery. He not only gives Trevor a purpose, but he helps him get millions of dollars. When Michael died, Trevor actually grieved. He felt the guilt and pain of not being able to save him. He got a tattoo to remember him. Trevor would have given almost anything to have gotten Michael back. When Trevor finds out that Michael is still alive, you can probably understand why he'd be happy and angry. Because regardless of why Michael was still alive, Michael abandoned Trevor for 9 years.
Homie, you sound like some bitch he ain't called. Like, oh, he lied to me.
I am some bitch he didn't call for 10 years.
Even if there was a completely innocent reason, that means Michael specifically did not reach out to Trevor for 9 years. His best friend, his surrogate family, abandoned him. So you have all those bonding years and all those years of abandonment, which would obviously create a very conflicting set of emotions. Those emotions end up leaning far more into hatred when he finds out how Michael lived, which of course was betraying Trevor. But these feelings eventually shift positive again when Trevor forgives Michael for doing that.
Why didn't you kill Mikey?
I thought a lot about it. I wanted to. I really did. But he's got kids and I don't quite know. I suppose it was a long time ago and I suppose we had some fun here and I suppose I made my mind up that he's a dick. But the people against us were worse, so I killed the bigger dicks and Michael lucked out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, he's still a dick, but I kind of love him for it. I love how much he hates himself. It makes me feel all is right with the world.
But even at the end of the game, when Trevor has forgiven Michael and doesn't necessarily want to kill him anymore, obviously Trevor still does hate Michael to some degree.
Now we keep a low profile and get on with our lives.
As friends.
Well, do I have a choice?
No, not really.
I know, I still hate myself. But hey, at least I know the words for it now.
Yeah, but I hate you, and I know the words for it. So does that mean I don't have to go to therapy?
How does Trevor meet Michael? Trevor gives a little bit of information about this to Jimmy when he's on a hangout with him.
I was a drifter, up by the border. Then I met your dad. We started doing scores, and boom!
He then tells a much longer story to Lamar on the mission Pac-Man.
I was running this small air freight outfit in North Yankton. This guy I know says there's this other guy needs some hot cargo moved across the border. A few days later, I'm waiting on the runway. I see this dust coming up off the road. Only it ain't one dust trail, it's two. I got told one guy in cargo. First car comes through the gate, stops, someone comes out. It's my age, just 20, kind of fat but strong underneath.
Love at first sight.
Yeah, something like that. Other car comes through the gate. Old guy falls out, starts yelling and waving his arms and pointing at the kid.
The dude that got jacked?
Who fucking knows? Fat guy's running, old guy's shouting. I don't really care, I play peacemaker. Concerned citizen. I get close to the old guy and I pull out this flare gun I'm carrying around, squeeze the thing off in his eye.
Shit.
It was horrible. We had to pick up the body and dump it in a lake on the way. Thing was still burning in his head when we dropped him. Plane never smelt the same. Both of us threw up when we landed. It was quite a baptism.
So that was like it? You and Michael rolling on through?
Más o menos. Michael didn't have the nerve back then. I didn't have the direction. Kinda worked.
And finally, you could probably also consider the story on Polito's score to be related to their meeting, as Trevor's first job was probably done with Michael.
I'm supposed to trust this man with my life, and he don't trust me with the details of his first bank job?
Well, how about you? I'm here. I'll back the facts.
That checks cash place? I went in, took him for $8 grand, walked out.
It was a bit more complicated than that, though, wasn't it, T?
Maybe I knew the guy. Maybe he ID'd me.
Maybe you did 6 months.
Maybe I was out in 4, and that, children, is why we don't leave witnesses.
That, children, is why you don't rob people that you know.
Why does Trevor keep cooperating with the FIB? Firstly, you could argue that he thinks he has no choice, which is probably true. Secondly, to support his friends Franklin and Michael. After all, Trevor is very loyal. Thirdly, as he says to Steve at the beginning of Blitzplay, he's in there for a pardon.
Because I was told that if we helped out with that thing, which we did, then our past indiscretions would be forgotten.
Not only that, but he hopes to use Steve and Dave's connections to help Brad, who of course he believes is in prison.
Poor motherfucker must have woke up handcuffed to a hospital gurney after that stunt of yours. He still writes to me from the joint, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, he thinks you might actually commute Brad's sentence when this is all over.
That's good. We'll send another letter. It's about time anyway.
Oh, so that's you who's been sending those fucking letters to Trevor, huh?
In ending B, why is Trevor unwilling to help Franklin kill Michael, or even associate with Franklin after he said he was going to kill him, especially considering they had already done the big score job, so he didn't need him anymore? Trevor is just a loyal dude who considers himself to be very principled. Maybe a part of him does want to see Michael dead, but Michael will have to die in the right way.
Take the fucking shot!
In the same way he says, sure, maybe one day he may have killed Brad himself, but he certainly wouldn't have got the cops involved.
Would I have done it one day? Maybe. Probably. Well, probably likely. Wouldn't have done it in such an underhanded fashion, and the authorities wouldn't have been involved, but yeah.
You can therefore see why Trevor would want nothing to do with Franklin betraying the trust of Michael in order to kill him.
You're turning on him? I have had enough traitors in my life.
Franklin was just another traitor, just like Michael, and Trevor wanted nothing to do with it. Why does Trevor hold Jimmy and Tracey so dear to him, even though he is very temperamental and snappy at everyone else in the game? While the dates aren't exactly clear, it's obvious that Trevor was around for the birth of Jimmy and Tracey. And obviously watching them grow up, being an uncle to them, having them call him Uncle T would obviously affect him, especially considering that Trevor knew the pains of having a neglectful childhood. Trevor's statement to Laszlo at the end of Fame or Shame highlights just how far he'd go to protect them.
Well, that little girl sat on my lap when she was 2 years old, and I swore to God that I would rip the fucking skin off anyone who fucking wronged her.
Basically, I think they were just the family that Trevor never had.
I was sad when I lost your father, but I was heartbroken to lose you kids as well. So, how's Tracey? I don't see enough of that girl. You've got to be there for her.
I try.
Do you?
No, I don't.
Your mama and your dad probably shouldn't have had kids, but they did. And they ain't gonna suddenly stop being selfish and look after you, so you gotta look after each other.
I'll try.
Do that.
So come on, T, let's not fuck around. Take me drinking.
No, you're a child.
I'm almost 20.
Everyone wants someone to love and someone to love them. Trevor's no different. Is Trevor now in Vinewood with all his money as a lifestyle coach? In the Smuggler's Run DLC for GT Online that was set in 2017, Ron does tell us the fate of Trevor.
That bastard Trev. My best friend? Oh, he's supposed to protect me forever? Then he goes all Vinewood on me. He's too important for Ron now, but he's a guru. He's a lifestyle coach. I don't know what he is. I bet he's got abs.
Many people don't know that during the Bureau raid, we weren't just there to delete files on Michael, but files on Trevor as well. And if you look at what's being deleted, you can see references to Trevor's files being deleted. And during ending C, the canon ending, Michael references that Dave needs to be left alive so that Dave can prevent people fucking with them in the future.
We just gotta silence a few noisy people. Steve Haynes.
Dave Norton.
No, we need him alive. Why? So nobody fucks with us afterwards.
This suggests to me at the end of GTA 5, rather than just defending Michael like Dave used to, he would now be defending Franklin and Trevor as well.
And then, you know, happy.
This is obviously very different from when we first meet Trevor. Basically, one of the reasons why Trevor had to stay in hiding was because he didn't really have that defense against law enforcement that Michael did. But at the end of the game, Trevor has a lot more money, has connections with Dave, has connections with Lester, and so therefore is more defended and can therefore be more out in the open. So what I'm saying is, this future for Trevor is very plausible based on what we know of what happened in GTA 5. How did Trevor know where to go help Michael and Dave on the wrap-up? I don't think we're actually told. It is clear that Trevor didn't fly in later, he was already there hiding when they were having their meeting. If I was to proffer an explanation, I would say Lester knew that Mike was going to meet them, and so Lester contacted Trevor and said, hey yo, you may want to watch things might go bad. Either that, or perhaps Trevor was monitoring Merryweather channels and happened to overhear of the meeting going down. Why did they bother pretending that Brad was still alive and in prison? So the simplest answer is that they hoped to draw Trevor out of hiding, which did work out to a degree because apparently Trevor did reach out in some untraceable way to the prison that Brad was meant to be in.
A few years ago, a letter came to the federal prison system addressed to Brad. Wasn't signed, but it gave a P.O. box in Sandy Shores. I played the part of Brad, and we started a correspondence.
Yeah, thanks for telling me, Davey.
In one of these messages from Brad, Dave tells Trevor to turn himself in. The other possible reason is that it suited Michael and Dave's goals to have a story with only one body, compared to a story with two, as their goal was to have one of those supposed bodies disappear. If the story was that both Michael and Brad died, people might question how that can be so when there is only one body. If instead they spread a story where only one of them died, then it would make sense that there was only one body and people wouldn't ask where the other one was. Having Brad disappear into the prison system enabled them to say, hey, this body here is Michael Townley. Sure, it was Brad's body, but most people didn't know what Brad, Michael, and Trevor looked like. It's a part of the reason it wasn't too risky for Michael to go to his own funeral. Honestly, he was probably on the lookout for the handful of people in the world who might be able to recognize that that body in the casket wasn't Michael Townley. It's also important to remember that they wanted to kill Trevor in the original plan. No one gave a fuck about Trevor.
No one gives a fuck about me!
If Dave signs a few bits of paper that says Trevor's in some prison in the middle of nowhere, no one's gonna ask questions. Which honestly is kind of the same for Brad, except for one person, which is Trevor. So ultimately, having Brad still be alive on paper, lost in the prison system, gave them a body that could be used as a substitute for Michael, better enabling him to escape. Some have suggested that they could have used the local yokel's body, but remember that the original plan didn't involve his death, and his being a local would likely mean that more people in the area would know him, and therefore they would ask more questions than they would for loners like Trevor and Brad. Does Trevor ever realize that Michael intended to get him killed? On the mission Bury the Hatchet, when Trevor sees Brad's body in Michael's grave, Trevor says outright that maybe it was meant to be him in the coffin instead of Brad.
This thing, it didn't work out the way it was supposed to.
Oh, how was that, huh? With Brad in the can and me in the ground, or both of us in the coffin? I think the only thing that didn't go as planned was me showing up on your doorstep 10 years later, Mikey.
Did Trevor go insane because he got kicked out of the military? I think it's pretty clear that Trevor was crazy before he joined the Air Force. For a start, we know his mother was physically and emotionally abusive, and the factors that motivated him to join the Air Force, like the desire to drop a nuke, are not exactly normal.
He could fly planes, this kid. So he signed up to the Air Force to fly all day long and bomb villages and maybe, just maybe, drop the nuke. And it was all going well until one day, an evil witch in charge of psychological evaluations told him he was unstable.
And besides, the psych evaluation he took in the Air Force said he was unhinged. So obviously his being grounded by the Air Force isn't what caused him to go crazy. How would Trevor realistically know that Michael was still alive because of a quote that he probably got from a movie? Michael didn't simply have one movie quote. He was obsessed with old movies and would quote them constantly.
And how you know it's him?
It's his M.O., and it's the same corny shit he was spewing 10 years back.
It wasn't simply the quote that got Trevor's interest, but that it happened during a jewel store heist.
He's alive?
He's walking, and he's talking, and he's sticking up joints, so I guess, yeah, that makes him alive, don't it?
Obviously, Trevor still wanted to confirm it, but what are the odds that there were two jewel store robbers who both happened to quote old movies while doing heists? Was Trevor a military pilot?
I was in the service. That structure is what you need.
When Trevor is recounting his past on Friends Reunited, he says that he was already able to fly planes before he joined the Air Force. However, it does seem as though he was still trained by them, but was grounded before he officially became a part of the organization.
It was all going well until one day, just before he got his wings, an evil witch in charge of psychological evaluations told him he was unstable. Grounded him for life. That's terrible. I was in the Air Force. I served my country.
I ain't a trained Air Force pilot like you.
Then get better at it, or fly through a barn.
However, we do learn on Pac-Man that Trevor did continue to fly.
I was running a small air freight outfit in North Yankton. A tiny operation.
Which is where he met Michael. And then of course the rest is history. Why did Trevor think that Michael was dead? I mean, Trevor saw Michael get shot and all the papers were reporting Michael Townley's dead, shot by Dave Norton.
You remember after the bust, I was in all the papers. I was on the evening news. The man who killed Michael Townley.
Like during Prologue, when Trevor hears the police, he says, someone must have blabs.
Ah! The fucking feds! Someone must have fucking talked!
Like clearly at the time he thought some information must have leaked to the police. But obviously Trevor considered Michael to be his family, his brother that he grieved for. He even got a tattoo to remember him. Obviously Trevor emotionally didn't want to think, wait a second, maybe Michael may have betrayed me and this was all a ruse. So what I'm saying is, even if he had sufficient information to suspect that Michael might still be alive, emotionally he was not going to think about that. Michael being his friend, if he was still alive anywhere in the world, of course he'd reach out to Trevor. That he didn't would confirm for Trevor that Michael was dead. Why in Prologue does Dave want Trevor killed? I don't think Dave had any reason to want Trevor killed, but Michael obviously did. Michael obviously knew firsthand that Trevor was an unstable, unhinged, unpredictable, crazy killer. Michael knew that if he went forth with his plan to betray Trevor and Brad, that he and his family would never truly be safe if Trevor was still alive.
Don't leave me again, Jim.
Only Dad faked his death. You could have maybe tracked us down.
Yeah, maybe, but just don't leave me again, or this time I will come for you in your sleep.
Cool. I'm not going anywhere. So, Uncle T, man, what's the deal?
He's in town for a while.
I know we really don't talk about the whole name change thing, but is that, like, cool? I always thought we changed the name to get away from him.
It's fine. Trevor won't hurt you.
I know that. Trevor loves me. I'm worried about you.
It'll be okay.
Michael knew that it wouldn't matter where Trevor was, if he was free, behind bars, whatever. If he got a whiff of what Michael did, he would hunt them down and kill them all. Honestly, I would argue, given Trevor's loyalty, if Michael said, hey, I want to get out of the game, I want to protect my family, Trevor may have even helped him. But you can probably see how Michael wouldn't really want to take that risk. Who knows what Trevor might do? And as we see, Michael would hesitate to actually kill Trevor himself, but having Dave do it is something more manageable. This isn't something Michael wanted to do. He felt it was a necessity, and probably a decision he didn't want to make.
I didn't want it to come to this.
Yes, you did! You just don't have the fucking balls to do it!
We can see him bury the hatchet. Michael has some difficulty actually pulling the trigger.
Now, pull the fucking trigger! You ain't got the guts.
And in ending A, he shows some regret that he had to do this.
Fuck, kid. You know what, tough guy? It's time you grow the fuck up. There's gotta be a limit, kid. You know, a point where even assholes like us say, enough is fucking enough.
Why did Trevor kidnap Patricia? As we can see in the opening cutscene to Card Libre, Trevor shows an immediate interest in Patricia.
Oh. Hello.
It could be possible that Trevor seeks the love and approval of older women because his mother would never give those things to him. Whatever the case may be, Trevor sees firsthand Martin mistreating Patricia. As they're leaving Martin's home, Martin yells at Patricia and Trevor looks back in disapproval. This combined with Trevor's annoyance at not getting paid, I figured Trevor kidnapped Patricia in part to save her, but also to punish Martin. Why does Trevor need to return Patricia if he loves her? So about halfway through the game, Martin hires Michael and Trevor to shoot down a plane, kill Javier, and get some documents back for him. When Trevor goes to give the documents to Martin, a disagreement happens. Trevor seems to damage Martin's ear, and then he kidnaps Patricia and rushes off.
I asked for a fair day's pay after a fair day's work. And he kind of got a little angry. So I admit, I kind of got a little angry.
Did you kill him?
What kind of fucking animal do you take me for? No, I didn't kill him.
Oh, fuck.
But I did kidnap his wife.
Oh, no.
While the affection that Patricia and Trevor end up showing each other seems to be real, as a part of the deal to get Martin and his goons off Michael and Trevor's back so they could go back to Los Santos, Trevor had to give up Patricia. And I guess the statue that they stole during Derailed was meant to apologize for the whole ear thing.
Perfect for fucking what?
For squaring things with that Mexican psycho.
Basically, if he didn't give her up, then Martin and his goons would have just chased Michael and Trevor until the end of time. Although to be fair, given how many gangs Trevor and Michael take out, there seems to be no reason they couldn't have just killed Martin and his goons as well, but I guess this just makes for a more interesting story. Why was Trevor idolizing Brad? So Brad was actually a later addition to their crew. Trevor, Brad, and Michael were not actually a trio from the beginning. During surveying the score, when Lester's talking about the past, Brad is added as an afterthought, where Lester says,
there were 3 guys. Michael, Trevor, and Lester.
And Brad.
Yeah, sure, Brad was there sometimes as well. I mean, there were other guys though, too. So,
Trevor, when talking about the past, mentioned how he eventually met a new friend named Brad.
Bad troll under the bridge went soft.
Hold on, what?
So little Trevor made a new friend called Brad, and he was thinking about cutting Mike off when it all went to shit and Mike got killed and Brad went to jail.
And it was actually meeting Brad that made Trevor consider cutting Mike off, meaning that Trevor at the time was considering parting ways with Michael and running with Brad instead. Which actually makes me wonder what would have happened if Michael had just mentioned to Trevor that he wanted to get out of the game and how that would have gone down. But of course that didn't happen and Brad was killed. And what seemed to happen after that is what happens to a lot of people after they die. People forget all those bad things and don't mention them and just say, he was the most wonderful person, it's a shame he's gone. This especially happened for Trevor because Trevor is fiercely loyal.
Gee, you gotta get out of here!
I'm gonna leave you, Mikey! Loyalty is important. Let me put it that way. Loyalty is important. I mean, that's the only code you need. Loyalty is the code. Kill strangers, protect friends, eat enemies.
Brad was a part of the crew, and the crew supports each other. Trevor also likely felt a lot of guilt. His friend Michael died, and Brad's in jail. This is all Trevor's fault. So Michael and Brad, they're saints. It's old boy Trevor who's the terrible person. He let down his friends. This streak of loyalty we see most explicitly when Franklin tries to take out Michael in ending B. Franklin calls Trevor and says, "Hey, I would like your help with this."
Frankie. Hey, T-Man, I'm in trouble, dawg. I think I gotta take out Michael.
What are you telling me this for?
Cuz, dawg, I'm doing this for us. I thought you could.
Well, I can't. You're turning on him? I have had enough traitors in my life.
Man, your ass could say thank you. Shit.
You deserve each other.
At this point, Trevor knew that Michael had betrayed him and wanted him dead, but despite this, Trevor wanted nothing to do with this. But the most information we get regarding Trevor and Brad comes after ending C, when Franklin and Trevor hang out.
If I'm completely honest with you, Brad was a bit of a dick. Would I have done it one day? Maybe. Probably. Well, probably likely. Wouldn't have done it in such an underhanded fashion, and the authorities wouldn't have been involved, but yeah, bit of a dick.
So all this was over a guy neither of you really liked?
Well, the principle was the thing, and if I'm anything, I'm a man of principles. I mean, let's be honest, Brad was a dick, and things were getting out of control. You had the kids, and you'd already missed so much of their growing up. I guess I'm happy you made it out alive, and with enough money to make sure your kids became total, complete nightmares.
Hey.
So basically, after Brad died, Trevor's loyalty and guilt caused him to idolize Brad. It was only when he reached the point where he could forgive himself and Michael that he realized that Brad was ultimately a dick, so who cares? Did Trevor really kill both Debra and Floyd? Once upon a time I did hear there was a Weasel News report that gave a definitive answer, but for the life of me, I can't find it. I in fact know other people have looked for it as well and they haven't found it, so I'm just assuming it's a myth. So as far as I'm aware, there is no definitive answer to this. I can therefore only speculate on what went down. Based on everything that we know about the characters, where they were standing and what they were holding when everything faded to black, I would say that Floyd enraged went at Debra with a knife, causing her to shoot him multiple times. Trevor then ran at Debra, potentially grabbing the knife from Floyd as he went by, and took Debra's head and smashed against the window twice, which is why we see those blood splatters outside. Trevor then enraged for the death of Floyd and being in this sort of rampage mode would have just started stabbing Debra over and over again, covering him in blood. And that's why you see him leaving covered in a lot of blood and out of breath.
Hey man, I was just thinking about you.
Really? Why's that?
The place where you stay, it's like a crime scene, dawg.
Yeah. Tragedy struck soon after I left.
Sure, whatever.
However, there are some beta files accidentally left in the game that mentions that Rockstar's original intent was to have a mission called Paradise Lost, where Trevor kills Floyd and his girlfriend Debra. This information is from early development, so doesn't necessarily speak to their final intent for the mission. The reason why this seems implausible compared to my scenario is that we would have to assume that Debra never fired her gun. There are no bullet holes in the apartment, so if she didn't shoot and hit Floyd, what did she shoot at? I guess we could assume that Trevor rushed up to Floyd and killed him with his own knife, and Debra was so shocked that she didn't fire, and so Trevor took her out as well. What if Trevor never met Michael? If you mean at all, like they never meet, obviously I can only speculate. But I mean, despite Trevor being insane, he is technically very capable. It is reasonable to say that the only reason Michael got as far as he did, stealing that many millions of dollars for that long, is because he had Trevor by his side. And so I guess if Trevor never met Michael, I'd say that Michael would probably have ended up in jail or dead. And Trevor wouldn't be any less insane. Maybe he wouldn't go around robbing people, but he'd probably go around doing fucked up shit anyway, so he probably also would have ended up dead or in jail. Michael and Trevor to me kind of complement each other, making an unstoppable force. If they're both separate, they'd be much worse off. Why did Trevor head to Sandy Shores, turn insane, and start making drugs? For a start, Trevor was insane long before he went to Sandy Shores.
Okay, I never claimed to be an angel, but you meet Trevor, Franklin. You'll swear I am an angel. Yeah, Trevor was always a lot of a psycho. He'd kill someone in broad daylight, and we'd have to jump town.
Secondly, I think it would make sense for Trevor to have ended up in Sandy Shores if in the game Brad was supposedly being held in the prison there. I don't think it's stated explicitly in the game that Trevor believes that Brad is in the prison near Los Santos, but I think it would make sense. Although of course it's a video game, so he just needed to be around somewhere where Michael was, but you know. And thirdly, while Trevor is probably exaggerating a little bit, on Crystal Maze Trevor does say that he's always dreamed of being a drug dealer.
I mean, since I was a little kid, I dreamt big. You know, I've always wanted to be an international drug dealer and a weapons trader.
And clearly now being in that area, he had the opportunity.
Only thing they farm out here is methamphetamine!
Why is Trevor so poor and living in a sorry state when we meet him, considering how much he robbed in the past? Wasn't he meant to have many millions of dollars? The biggest contributing factor, as Trevor says at the end of Derailed, is that when his identities were blown because of the failed Ludendorff job, he lost access to his millions.
Hey, you had your savings.
That I couldn't access because you blew the identities. You know, there was nothing for Brad's defense.
More details aren't given than that, but basically he couldn't access the accounts that had his money anymore. Or maybe had he tried to access them, it would have set some red flags. After all, he was meant to be living off the grid to hide out. In saying that, obviously he could have lived in better circumstances had he wanted to.
But why are you out here?
It's off the grid. We're away from it all. It's somewhere real and authentic. This is America!
I mean, he owned an airfield, had like 200 grand. He could have had a better house if he wanted.
I'm sorry to ask this, but does your contact pay well for this kind of shipment?
Oh, he pays. Better than any in this sorry country.
But Trevor was a chaotic, undirected drug addict. He just wasn't interested in getting a new home.
You know the airfield's mine, don't you? Oh yeah, you can afford a runway, but you can't afford to move out of that corrugated metal death shack.
Sure, it's not like he could have bought himself a mansion while trying to stay off the radar, but he could have had something better than a trailer, especially one covered in trash. It could also be that to some extent, Trevor didn't feel deserving of something better, feeling a lot of self-hatred and guilt because of his past. So yeah, losing access to funds, needing to stay low, and lack of interest. Why does Trevor not have any of the money that was stolen during the Ludendorff heist? All three characters, when running to the car, do have a bag of money strapped to them. When getting into the car though, they all take them off and put them on the seats. The end result of this is that when the car crashes, Trevor gets out and does not take his bag of money, which is certainly a weird oversight on his part. The end result though is Brad carries both Trevor's and his own bag of money. So when Brad gets hit, you can see he has one bag of money strapped to him and another that just drops onto the floor. Presumably that bag that drops on the floor is Trevor's, and when Trevor runs away, he doesn't have time to take it with him. Why does Trevor hate the Lost MC? The Lost MC are simply rivals for Trevor Phillip Industries in regards to the selling of guns and drugs. I mean, Trevor explains that explicitly when he's taking out Ortega.
You are out of business. The Lost MC are out of business. The guns and crank in this area go through Trevor Phillips Enterprise or they ain't going.
This is an unprecedented turn of events.
I always said I was gonna take over.
Prior to Trevor enacting his plan to take over, it seemed like he and the bikers were on fairly good terms. When Trevor initially pulls up on the bikers, they speak in a familiar and fairly friendly tone.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Hey, you seen Ashley? Johnny's looking for her.
Well, you know, as a matter of fact, I just did, just 10 minutes ago. Yeah, I saw her on the end of this penis here.
Johnny ain't gonna be cool if you messing with her again.
Even when Trevor is taking out the bikers, some of them will say that they regret needing to kill Trevor because he was such a good cooker of crystal meth.
Such a shame we got to kill such a fine cooker of crystal.
Did Trevor cut Martin's ear off at the end of Carta Libre, considering his band-aid at the end of Monkey Business? There does seem to be a reasonable interpretation. Trevor does end Monkey Business by yelling,
"You better treat her right, man! Yeah, otherwise, the other ear, of course!"
Whether he removed the ear entirely or just damaged it, who knows? How can Trevor manage to stay low from the FIB with that unique personality? It may not look like it on a map, but America is a really, 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 really big place, with hundreds of millions of people, and where Trevor set up shop was multiple states away from where he was last seen. Finding Trevor in the middle of nowhere completely off the grid is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Why do the Chinese gangsters want to kill Trevor? I think it's as simple as the Chengs were going to have a deal with the O'Neills, and then Trevor killed all the O'Neills. He also then viciously beat Tao Cheng. So basically they wanted Trevor dead because he ruined their business relationships and the general disrespect that he shows them.
Your operation causes problem for me. I want to expand into Blaine County, but your business and your temperament prevent me from making inroads.
How did Trevor know where Michael's house was? Wade was specifically asked to find where Michael Townley was in Los Santos, and he succeeded.
I looked through the phone directory. I did find a Michael DeSanta, about the right age, married with 2 kids.
What's his wife's name?
Amanda?
Amanda?
Yeah.
You're a genius, you moron. Come on, come here. Don't you ever not tell me things I want to know.
Why did Trevor kill Johnny K? If you haven't noticed, Trevor is a guy who just acts on his feelings whenever he has them. He had all those emotions welling up inside of him because of him realizing that Michael may be alive, and he just lashed out on this guy who happened to be giving him shit. It seems pretty obvious that Trevor already wanted to take out the Lost, and after killing Johnny, he's like, well, Now or never, I suppose. How does Trevor not get caught being a massive drug lord and criminal? Because when we meet him, he's not a massive drug lord and criminal. After 9 years, he's living in the middle of nowhere, has maybe 200k worth of assets, and has 3 employees. Like, sure, he does commit crimes, but he's in the middle of nowhere off the grid, in a place where the police presence is not the biggest, and most of them are probably corrupt anyway. How come Trevor leaving Mr. K at the airport has no consequences? It's a video game. Why does Trevor wake up on an island with a bunch of dead bikers? When we end reuniting the family as Michael, we're automatically switched to Trevor, who happens to be on an island surrounded by a bunch of dead bikers. I don't think any reason is explicitly given, but the last time we see Trevor is in the opening cutscene to Fresh Meat, and he clearly isn't doing very well. He's clearly freaking out, lashing out, and you can just assume that he went on a bender, got very drunk or drugged up, what have you, and just that's where his night ended. Having reached the end of the video, I'm sure you want more content like this, so feel free to check out the Michael Law video or the Franklin one, which I'll release at some point in the future. Thank you all for watching, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I wish you all the best.